Hi girls, today we are going to learn about the Great Depression. It was basically a financial crisis that began in the United States in 1930s. It was the longest depression in time and that affected the largest number of countries. The most affected country was the United States due to the expansion of North American trade abroad. It turned the Wall Street crash into a world crisis. You will be asking, what is the Wall Street crash? Well, it was a collapse of stock markets in the United States after panic selling of stocks and shares by both professional and small investors.
Some social effects this event brought were rise in the crime rate, unemployment, lots of suicide cases, malnutrition, prostitution, and alcoholism. Next, we're going to show you a racism case that was part of the history of the United States, since it was a tough and hard case to solve, and in our opinion, it was handled in a very unfair way. Let's start.
Today we are going to tell you the story about the Scudborough Boys. You have to pay attention because at the end there will be an activity about this.
Let's start by saying that Afro-Americans during the time of the Great Depression were considered the most affected people by this situation. They claimed to be the last hired but first fired, and also first to see hours and job cuts. They also experienced the highest unemployment rates during the 1930s.
Also, before the Great Depression, Afro-Americans had unskilled jobs, and during and after the Great Depression, these jobs disappeared or were occupied by white people. So, on March 26, 1931, 9 young black boys were arrested on a freight train. The reason why this happened was that they were being falsely accused of raping 2 white young ladies after almost being lynched.
After this, the boys were brought to trial in Scudborough, Alabama, their hometown, despite the evidence that exonerated them from any crime committed. In 1931, during a series of appeals and trials, the 9 boys remained in prison where they were mistreated on several occasions.
All the white juries keep the case. What a coincidence, right? On April 9, 1931, all the boys except the youngest, that was 12 years old, were sentenced to 75 years in jail and to death by electric chair as a final decision. Samuel Lebowitz, who traveled and took charge of the defense without any reward, was a man and lawyer with no connection or relation to the Communism Party, who was the one in charge to create all this rejection against black people at the time.
He put all his mind and effort to make some of the new jury black so the next trial could be more balanced, but he failed. Samuel put such pressure on Ruby, one of the white girls, that she confessed, making up the story that none of the 9 boys had raped them. Well, the confession did not change the turn of the wheel 1 degree, and the jury said again guilty. And to top it all, he defended the suspicion that Lebowitz had bought Ruby's confession, believe it or not.
As a fact, while the process kept going, outside, white communist people were protesting to put all the 9 boys on death penalty without any compassion. And on the other hand, black people were protesting since the Scudborough Boys were not giving access to a lawyer until shortly before the trial. With little time to prepare a legal defense, they were fighting for their rights to be accomplished.
As a final verdict, after involving the Supreme Court of Alabama, these 9 young men were exonerated, who from the beginning were always innocent. All this happened after having spent 10 years in jail, going from trial to trial, where they were granted a new sentence that they finally never served.
Thank you girls so much for your attention. We hope you feel prepared for the activity we have.